No one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Glory of Golden State Gaming. I'm your host, Swamp Swimmer, and with me as always, the Oppenheimer to my Barbie, Vespacian.
Hi everybody. How you doing? Good to be back.
So, you went to the ETC, representing the United States. It was wonderful. Grand experience. Our next 6, 7, 8 battle reports are going to be your games out there, some scrimmage games and also the actual ETC games. But before we get into that, tell me, give me your overall impressions of how was it traveling over there, fun activities outside of Ninth Age. Lay it on me.
Yeah, so I just got back a couple days ago, so still relatively fresh, but maybe a little bit jet lagged. So apologies if I'm not 100% there. But no, it was a great experience. I mean, you know, it's funny, it's hard to separate the ETC from all of the lead up to the ETC, right? Because in a way I've been working, towards those days all year essentially. Mm-hmm. But a lot of fun. I travel internationally for work or have in my career a lot. So that wasn't necessarily the more exciting part of it. The logistics of a 10-hour plane flight and all that kind of stuff is sort of the tax associated with getting over there, right? But it was really fun to be in Amsterdam. Got to do a little bit of touristy stuff and exploring with the team and people from other teams, which was cool. And I can't say enough positive things about the logistics of the event. It was at a really nice hotel near the airport. And it was a very well organized experience. Everything was in the same hotel that most people were staying at. Lunch and breakfast were on site. So a lot of those, I'd kind of gone to ETC hearing these historical tales of people falling off their bikes and rolling down a mountain, or not being able to get lunch in time before their next round, and and no air conditioning and no food and no water and like all these things. And so I was really pleasantly surprised. I mean, this thing was organized like a proper business conference, really, really well done. And I would, I definitely like that style of ETC. Personally, I'm getting a little too old to roll down mountains myself.
Yeah. There's definitely some stories out there, fun stories of crazy venues, crazy experiences. But it sounds like this one was well organized.
Yeah, really well organized. So kudos to Frederick and the other organizers for all. I'm sure all the work that went into it is really, really cool. And the overall experience was just an absolute blast. I mean, I'm father of two. I don't get to do a ton of trips just by myself. So I got to get away for a few days and hang out with my buddies and do some fun stuff and play some Ninth Age. So yeah, it was couldn't say enough positive things about it. It was a lot of fun. Very, very excited to share the tales from abroad with everybody.
Definitely, yeah, I'm excited to go over them. So you obviously played the 6 games in ETC. You did not participate in the ESC.
I did not. We had some organized scrimmages with other teams on the Thursday before the event, and so I would have had to drop for the second day of ESC, and I just didn't feel like it. Plus, I got over there on Tuesday, kind of early afternoon, so Wednesday was sort of my one free day to do stuff. So I thought, invest that in kind of having some good times and getting a little bit of rest and R&R before the campaign.
And you had 2 scrimmages, right? USA had 2 scrimmages.
So we essentially, Thursday was sort of like our primer day, because we organized it almost exactly like a day at ETC, and that we did a morning round and an afternoon round.
Gotcha. So total of 8 games we're gonna go through. Hey, let's just jump into the battle report. So Scrimmage round 1. You guys were against England?
That's right. Yeah.
England, and you got paired into Jake Cortine, a well-known guy in the Ninth Age circuit. Infernal Dwarves. So it's Encircle Spoils of War, but let's go over. This is the list we're going to talk about. You're going to be played for the next 8 games. So let's go over this list in a little detail. Let's dig into it a little bit. This is the list you chose to take to ETC. Just start from the top. Let's go down.
Yeah, so I've got the almost typical Nova Griff build, right, with the Dragonforged armor and Demon's Bane and Diadem protection. One thing I did that was a little bit different than most was I added the Fleet Officer.
Okay.
You know, this list, as you kind of go down, there's no big blocks. This is not a grinding list. It's a shoot, zone, pick, and then collapse with some sort of big multi-charges into something. It doesn't or shouldn't need to lose a combat and then stick, right? So not really a need for a BSB. The Fleet Officer gives that nice 18-inch Discipline 10 minimize panic bubble, which honestly is better than a BSB in a lot of cases for panics. So I like that, and honestly, I thought that was a great build, great way to avoid paying the BSB tax. And then I took the High Prince and the Lion Chariot. Love this model.
You do love this, yeah.
1-up, 5-up against Mundane. Turns off magic weapons. I like this, especially in a teams list. There's a lot of armies that build around a weapon. Think about Kagdai's Legacy, in the Ogre Khans, or Burning Portent and Warriors, for example, or the Doomblade in VS. And he just turns it off. It's awesome.
It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, and then went with a Wizard Master Cosmology Magical Heirloom, a little bit different than the build I was running earlier in the year with the Master of the Chromatic Tower Prince. This was a bit of a meta call, which, as it turns out, we didn't necessarily get right, but the Cosmology Master, combined with a couple of the other pieces later on, make this a really, really hard counter to a lot of VS lists. Turns off, the Huntsman turns off the Doomblade, you get Unity and Divergence, you get the Snipe, you get the Wakes from the Fire Phoenixes.
Yeah.
And at the time that we were forming the team and kind of building up the list archetypes, that was when you had that super strong VS patch where they were, just killing everybody, it seemed. So we were expecting a lot of VS. It didn't exactly turn out that way, but you can't really go wrong with the Master Cosmo with the Hereditary. Very flexible, never felt bad in any matchups. So yeah.
Definitely, yeah. The Cosmology is so flexible. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a pretty, I think, like a very standard core for the Highborn Elves, because it's pretty shooty. It gets you the scoring that you need with the 2 Seaguard units and the Highborn Lancers and the Citizen Archers. You got your Chaff with the Reavers. And it comes in at exactly 1125, so it must be perfect, right? Also, very importantly, brought 3 champions, which is really good with those 2 strong characters that I have. And then 2 Fire Phoenixes. I've been loving these guys. They absolutely scare the pants off of a lot of different stuff, and super flexible on the flanks. And because of their grind attacks, they help address one of the biggest issues I've always had with the Frost Phoenixes, which is just rubber lance. They've got 4 attacks, so they can very easily do 0 damage against a non-stoppable target.
Did you end up missing the debuffs from the Frost Phoenix?
I wouldn't say so. I bet those buffs and debuffs are a little bit more of they support more grinding, I would say. It's a little hard to kind of combo it super well with the characters. They're already, offense, defense 7. Just it comes up a little bit less often. Thing that I probably missed the most was the Aegis, honestly. The Fire Phoenixes just go down a lot faster to small arms fire, for example. So, and then 2 Reaver Chariots. Kind of flexible pieces. They're not super expensive. A little bit of light zoning on the flanks. They can be chaff in a pinch, pretty mobile. And then the sort of ubiquitous 3 Seaguard Reapers and 5 Grey Watchers, which was another move towards I found that I was, quite scared about artillery lists, right? With 3 big expensive flyers and 4 single models that were, easy to lose to cannons and stuff. So Grey Watchers help out with that a lot. I also really like the combination of the Grey Watchers, the Reaver Chariots, and the Reavers as my 3 dead drops in counter thrust and marching columns, because in the prior iterations of the list, I was having to start dropping core units or phoenixes. Scoring units or phoenixes as a dead drop, and that can be crippling in like a flag scenario, for example, or something like that. So, anyways, long story short, I liked kind of the flexibility of the Grey Watchers and how they help with some of the matchups a bit.
Definitely, and 4,500 points on the dot. Seems like it's a tight list. It's really, you love the Nova prints, you love the Lion Chariot prints. Those are your real heavy hitters, and a lot of stuff just whittling and getting. You're exactly right, setting up these multi charges. I think it's a great list. I think I'm excited to see how you do. I really am.
Yeah, thanks. Been enjoying playing with it.
You are into Jake, who is running Infernal Dwarves for this scrimmage. Let's see here. He's got a Prophet of Lugar, Master on Alchemy, Binding Scroll, Obsidian Rock. Another Prophet of Lugar, Adept Pyromancy, Great Weapon, Dragon Staff, Lightning Vambraces. The BSB with Blaze of Protection, Great Weapon, Breath of the Brass Bull. A Conjurer Apprentice on Witchcraft. 24 Infernal Warriors and Blunderbusses. 16 Flintlock Guys. 2 times 21 Shackled Slaves with Paired Weapons. 24 Disciples of Lugar with Paired Weapons. That's where the characters are going, I'm assuming. An Infernal Bastion, a Rocket Battery, and 2 Kadim Titans, one with a Rocket Battery, one with a NAFTA Thrower. So this is a shooty list.
Yeah, shooty. He's got he's got a lot of pretty mixed tools. He's got the rocket batteries for big stuff. He's got the naphtha thrower for big units. He's got the bastion unit for big stuff, and alchemy to go through armor. Pretty flexible list. I also liked a lot of the ID lists basically just went for one master, but he snuck in that Wizard Apprentice on Witchcraft, which I really think helps complement the Bastion really well. The threat of Raven's Wing on the Bastion is a must stop pretty much every turn. So
Oh yeah. Very true. Very true. What are you thinking? What are you thinking about matchup on this one? Well, first of all, brief comment on the overall pairings.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I think I missed a picture of the actual. We made these really cool pairing cards for our team, which you'll see in some of the coming reports, but I think I missed it for this one. This is a scrimmage, right? So what we were trying to do actually was test matchups. This was a good chance to kind of do a final pressure test on, is that really a green or an orange or whatever. You'll hear me referencing that a lot. We use like a color scale, essentially, pretty intuitive, but like from red to blue. Red is like I lose this match every time and get maybe at most 5 points. Orange is like in that 5 to 7 or 8 range. Yellow is that 8 to 12 range. Green is that 13 to 16 range, and blue is like I blow them out every time. This is an amazing match. Why roll dice? So I had this, and this is something that we'll talk about a little bit in some of the battles. I had this rated as a yellow overall. Okay. I think this is a match that can swing quite a bit on the roll for first turn.
I agree,
because he has super robust scoring units that are hard for me to take off at range, and in spoils, being able to move first turn and get that dominant position on the spoil will make it hard for my relatively flimsy scoring units to contest, right? So I think this is a yellow that skews orange. If he gets first turn and maybe stays pretty stable or maybe even verges into a positive matchup a little bit if I get first turn. One thing I really liked, and this was a meta call that ended up being spot on, was I basically don't care about alchemy with my army. All of my expensive stuff either has no armor or is fireborne. Yeah. And that also helps with those Kadim Titans with the rocket batteries and the naphtha throwers, right? So and the Disciples of Lugar. So while on the face of it, a big kind of punishing anti-big model ranged, threat feels bad against my list, the fact that the majority of it is flaming makes that a lot easier for me. So I think this is a little bit of a mixed match, but I felt like I had some plays coming into it.
Okay, I pretty much agree with that. You hit the nail on the head. Let's see here. First image is deployment.
Yeah. So one thing I want to comment on, maybe the die-hard old school hobbyists out there will disagree, but at ETC they had the ETC sort of approved maps set out, and the terrain and all of the deployment options and objective options were printed directly into the map. This was, from a precision of gaming perspective, it was amazing. There was no disputes, my model fell off of this hill, or I bumped that, or whatever it was. Everything was just on a flat surface, and it was amazing to not have to mark out in circle or dawn assault or things like that. This is a top tier gaming experience from an accuracy perspective here.
I completely agree. I love the map with all the deployments on it, all the objectives laid on it. The one thing I hate is the flat hills and flat impassable terrains. Because personally, I always forget that they're not flat, and I treat a hill like open terrain or a forest or something. Messes me up every time. But this is the ETC, so it's high competitive level. I can understand this level of precision. Yeah.
You hate to have a game swing on, somebody's models falling off a hill, right? So anyways, unfortunately, Jake won or lost the role for picking deployment, but won the role for going first. And so he set up, dropped everything to go first, and set up like this. So from left to right, and by the way, these pictures do not do it justice. Jake had an amazing themed and well-painted army list here. He kind of gone with, I guess, kind of like a Desert Raiders sort of a theme. So he's got, if you go on the left, you can see one of his Kadim Titans. I think the Naphtha Thrower one is like a sandworm sort of a thing, and then his slaves are include a bunch of camels and pack animals.
Oh, cool!
And then he's got a guy in a flying carpet in the back there, and just really, I'm not exactly sure where he got his models, but it all fit together really well, and he painted in this. You think of the Infernal Dwarves as this kind of red and brass and black kind of motif, but he did it in this really bright green and purple combo that I thought was really great. So kudos to Jake. I know he put a lot of work into it. And so on the left, he's got his Kadim Titan with the Naphtha Thrower. He's got one of his slave units. He's got his flintlocks, smallish size flintlocks. He's got his artillery rocket battery there. He's hiding his little apprentice with the witchcraft in the back. He's got his Bastion, which actually all of his characters are in that Bastion unit.
Oh, okay.
I think it's 6 or 7 static combat res, so it's a real problem for my list to deal with units like that.
Yeah.
And then he's got another slave unit, the Lugars, who of course have Ghost Step, and so they can just deploy directly behind that building, and then the other Titan with the rocket battery on the right.
Okay.
So I think, when I was looking at Jake's deployment, I think there were some obvious, it seemed pretty clear that he was going to go over there. I did feel like maybe he had not well positioned his scoring units on the central objective. He's got his slaves directly across from it. And I've got that hill to kind of work around, so he's going to have to turn himself. But that being said, I didn't really have, I think out of shot, or maybe it's just for me, you can see my chariots are down over on the right over there.
Oh yeah, they are a shot, but they're far right here.
Yeah, not not enough of a threat to prevent him from kind of turning that flank. But I did think going first, you know, and with the list that I had, he could have just easily plopped a scoring unit directly across from that central objective and just made it a non-issue. So what I did was I wanted to you know, at least have the appearance of making a play on the central objective. And I, you know, with the house there and the way he deployed, I felt like he'd essentially given me the left objective, which was fine. So I put the Lancers over on the left to grab that and pull it away.
Yep.
The two Phoenixes, which can, you know, make an end run around and maybe go after his artillery or have some impact in the center. 2 bolt throwers. I really, with that hill right there, you know, and the way the board was laid out, I really struggled to put the bolt throwers in good spots, honestly. And then the Nova Griff, the Huntsman Prince, kind of under his wing to the right, the Grey Watchers behind him, the Reavers, and then the 2 Sea Guard units, the Archers behind them, and the Sea Guard Reaper in the back, and as we mentioned, the Reaver Chariots over on the right.
Excellent. Okay. Next pick here is marked bottom of 1 movement. So this is after...
so you can see...
Yeah, after his turn.
He moved and then I moved. Yeah, so you can see Jake's movement here. You know, essentially, I think maybe giving the Reaver Chariots a little bit too much respect. I made these cool little flightless dragon models as my Reaver Chariots, and I think they were more intimidating looking than they actually were on the table. But so he starts to swing toward the center, but maybe a little bit more tentatively than he had to. I'm not exactly sure what he was, you know, he's kind of got the bastion. It may have just been because he was in the line and that was the only way to turn, because he kind of had to sacrifice a little bit of movement. But essentially just kind of starts the wheel of the line towards me. I, in response, move my my bunker, which has my mage kind of in the upper right corner, up onto the hill. You can see the Sea Guard unit, that, you know, next to it moves up as well. And then otherwise, I move over to grab the spoil on the left and move the Phoenixes and my single models essentially out of line of sight of the 1 non-flaming artillery, which is that one back there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How did his shooting phase go in turn 1? I only see like a few Sea Guard taken away.
Yeah, so essentially I basically fully mitigated his shooting phase. I think the only thing that he had was I think the only thing he ended up getting was like a pyro flow on that Sea Guard unit.
Okay, yeah, that explains it. Okay.
Yeah. So then, and this is where I can't remember how long the jump is to the next picture, but I'll just chalk this up to being jet lagged or not. It seems fairly obvious here, but I did some when I moved my bunker up, I did some measurements, and I thought that his flintlocks were out of range, meaning that they couldn't get into range. So I was thinking, you know, okay, you know, I'll have to stop Raven's Wing. I might take a pyro flow, and then I'll have the Bastion unit, you know, hitting on 5s or 6s. So there's really no danger to my mage. Now, in retrospect, looking at this, it seems pretty obvious those flintlocks are in range.
They are, yeah.
And so I don't want to do too much of a spoiler, but if you advance to the next picture.
Next picture says end of top of 2.
Yeah, so essentially turn 2 goes about as badly for me as it possibly could, because he moves up and, you know, he's very, very quite easily, he may not have even needed to move the flintlocks at all to get them in range, which is ridiculous. And he one-shots the bunker and the mage, all gone.
Wow.
Now, admittedly, I think we did the math at the end of the game, and I think on average he actually doesn't do that, but very, very possible.
Yeah,
right?
It's not completely out of the box. It's just
Yeah, I think he ended up killing like 7 or 8 with the bash and should have killed like 4 or something like that. So there was a little bit of swinginess, but it just was a mistake that should never have happened. But in the spirit of testing a matchup and kind of seeing how things go, I'm starting absent a magic phase, and one of my scoring units positioned on the objective, essentially at the top of 2 for me. So, set myself up at a bit of a disadvantage. The one that was really, actually really much more crippling was that he got, what was it? It was either a spike or maybe a molten copper, whatever it was. He got some spell into the Huntsman Prince, and did 3 wounds to him.
Ouch.
Which is, that was completely out of the box. Like, I was comfortable letting that spell off because I have a 3-up Aegis against it, if I recall correctly. But he just rolled out of the box and I rolled badly, and he got 3 wounds, which now exacerbated by the fact that I've lost my mage for healing. It puts me in a really bad spot because I actually quite like that Huntsman Chariot's positioning. He does multi-wounds to the Bastion, and that I could very feasibly take that Bastion off with a charge, start grinding through the characters. I fear basically none of his counter charges because they all have flaming attacks. So there's another world where that Huntsman takes 0 wounds and then hits that Bastion like a ton of bricks the following turn. But at this point, that option was gone for me. So
yeah, definitely. Let's see. Your next pick is bottom of 2. So this is your response.
Yeah. So essentially, I go into points preservation mode. I don't really see a path towards winning the objective at this point. I might be able to draw it, but I don't really see a path towards winning it. And because of where the Huntsman was, I need to start pulling him back, getting him away, because otherwise it's just going to give up his remaining points. So I use that Seaguard unit to make it impossible for him to get the Bastion unit up onto the hill without a Raven's Wing.
Okay.
So I kind of positioned him like that. I start pulling the Nova Griff over, right? Because pretty quickly that hill is not going to be a defense against the Bastion for much longer. I start pulling him and kind of migrating everything else out to the left, including the bolt thrower on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anyways, made those moves. Shooting was not doing much. I mean, one of the things that was a little frustrating about this was that I think I put a bunch of shots into that rocket battery because it was in the forest or in cover or whatever, the field or in cover, just wasn't getting wounds through on it. I did hit a few times on the Bastion, but didn't wound or something like that. So there's a few things that could have gone my way, but didn't.
The only thing I see wounded on his side is you put 3 wounds on Kadim here.
That's right. That was one thing that did go pretty well for me was my first shooting phase. All my light arms fire went into that Kadim and did a decent job. So then I think if we go into the next picture.
Bottom of 3. It's the whole turn later.
Yeah, so in this one, I think in my turn 2, I actually managed to get that Kadim. So that's nice, decent whack of points. And it was actually in Jake's turn 3, he does a couple of interesting things. So he moves up on the objective. He charges out his little, that's the next turn. He moves his Bastion up. I think he was hoping to get a Raven's Wing there with that positioning.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. I readjusted, basically did the same thing, keeping his Bastion off of the hill. And it was essentially, Jake did not do much, in his top of 3, aside from these movements. He didn't get a lot of damage from range because I've kind of mitigated a lot of it. Yeah. And it was actually at this point that I called my coach's timeout. Because that's an interesting aspect of ETC. Once per game, you can call a coach's timeout for 3 minutes and have your coach come over and essentially get perspective on how you should approach the rest of the game. So usually the way to use this is, how's the rest of the team doing, right? Do I need to be aggressive and take bigger risks to try to get more points, or do I
extra level of strategy at the tournament? That's what the team tournament brings to the experience. Pairing and
Correct.
Also this like pushing or drawing back in certain games depending on how well you're doing in other games. Whole nother level of strategy. Love team tournaments.
Correct. Yeah. So I think basically I asked, before I made the moves that you see here, I had my coach come over, and essentially what I said was like, look, I'm going to lose the objective and I've lost a lot of points already. I can essentially make the rest of this a non-game by just withdrawing. I probably get 6 or 7 points, and I just hide everything behind the house on the left for the rest of the game, essentially, and just let him pick up some squishy points around the edges. Or I make the move that I made here, which is a riskier one, but I thought I saw some interesting openings. Essentially, his Bastion is turned away. He's got no counter charges, and I could potentially, bring a lot of force onto those Citadel Guard that are the scoring unit on that objective. And it might be a bit complicated, but with the right timing, I can potentially kill that unit, throw the objective 3 inches away, right, and potentially prevent him from scoring it, right, which would mean a draw, right? So I saw some opportunities to swing the game, quite a lot of points by taking some risks here. So took this move, moved the 2 Phoenixes up and out, moved the Reavers forward to chaff the 2 units in the center, put the Nova Griff behind the hill so that it's getting hard cover for the rocket battery, but can essentially see around the hill, and is out of overrun range from the units if they hit the Reavers.
Yeah.
And then I moved the Sea Guard over to block off his Bastion from getting onto the hill again, right?
Yep.
And I do make a slight mistake here. I use those Reaver chariots to chaff the Lugars. Basically, I just wanted to stop them from advancing 12 inches forward and starting to bring their force into the center. But ultimately, what I just ended up doing was giving him a trampoline for the Kadim to get closer to my lines, because he was able to then charge there and just move, kind of adjust the Lugars around. So it achieved the objective, slowing the Lugars down, but it brought the Kadim closer, so I'm not sure that was better. So then anyways, we move on from here.
This is top of 4.
So Jake charges the Reavers with his slaves, which was fine. He does something interesting that I didn't anticipate. He charges his little Pyro Adept out of the Bastion unit to pin my Sea Guard there.
Oh, I see.
You can see that little guy. He jams forward with his slaves on the right-hand side, right there, turns his Lugars around and starts heading towards the center where the action is, and he charges my Reaver chariots with his Titan. Fortunately they passed their panic check from the terror, so that was okay. And then in this turn, trying to remember what happens. Maybe we can go to the next picture.
Yeah, this is bottom of 4.
Okay, so maybe go back and I'll explain the sequence here. So he kills the Reavers and overruns not very far. He one-shots the leading Phoenix, so the one that's just the base with the arrow pointing. Yeah.
With the rocket battery?
Yeah, and that was kind of a bummer because it didn't even have the Bastion, right? So to take it all off in one turn, I guess maybe he had some of the flintlocks on it from that unit in the center there. That's possible. But yeah, just a shame. And I mean, I have no magic defense, so fair enough. No way to prevent that from happening, I guess. But would have been nice to have that Phoenix still around for the following turn. So his Kadim kills the chariots and overruns, and then in my turn it gets a little complicated. So I think it's probably best to leave it here, and I'll explain, and we can jump forward. So yeah, so I charge with that Fire Phoenix. I believe on the slaves. What is it? I think it must be on the
slaves that that just blew up the Reavers.
Yeah, the sequencing is a little bit odd, but essentially what ends up happening is he flees with both the slaves and the flintlock axes. From the combination of the Phoenix charge and the Nova Grip charge. Okay. Right. Okay. And then ultimately I catch both of them with the Phoenix and the Nova Grip. Oh. So wipe those 2 units out. And then you can fast forward to the next one where you see how things have adjusted.
So they're way over here.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that happened in his turn was that little guy that the mage wiped, ran off the Seaguard and killed them. So now I've caught those units, and I actually kind of like this positioning. The Phoenix is pointing at the rocket battery, right? So there's no way for him to move out of line of sight. And then the Griffin is pointing at the Bastion unit, basically saying, if you move up to kill the Phoenix or shoot at me, then you're either going to get charged, or I'll run away and hide behind the building if you do enough damage to me, right? Yeah. And so, and then I start turning all of my guns towards the Titan to start working on it, because it had worked so well before, and that's another 450 points, right? So it was actually at this point that I started to feel like maybe things could start to move towards the better. So you caught
the Flintlock unit. Where did the token go that it was holding?
So he smartly didn't pick it up the prior turn. So he moved onto it, but then I think he was worried that I might do what I did and didn't pick it up. Right now, it would have been great if he had, because now I could have thrown it essentially where the Phoenix is, or where the Nova Griff is, right? Which would have made things a lot more complicated for him. But now if we move forward,
this is bottom of 5.
Yeah. So essentially what happens is he one-shots the other Phoenix, and unfortunately brings a trend of, I think in the entire tournament, I got 1 rebirth with those Phoenixes, which is a real shame. Now, they didn't die all that often, but here's an example: 2 dead, no rebirths, which is a shame. But he kills him. It did take the Bastion, so he took the rocket battery and the Bastion, finished him off. And so at this point, we're like, at this point, there's 2 plays. One is that I run away with the Nova Griffin, and basically run away, because then the Bastion gets the the thing. I lose objective. So I decided to go in with the Nova Griff. He kills his characters pretty well, I thought. And so I might be able to pick up a few 100 points and just sit there grinding on him, for the rest of the.
But he's got all that static combat res. You're afraid the Nova Griff is going to break?
So we're actually quite late in the game at this point, and with popping the Nova Flare and characters, I actually can generate quite a lot of combat res, because I can get 3+ their wounds, right? So I thought it would be okay for the number of combats that I had left, essentially. And again, this is where the fact that he didn't pick up that central token makes a big difference, because right now he is on the center. Yep. Right. Yep. So he can pick it up easily. If he hadn't,
it would have been
playing for a drawn objective here.
It's a smart move by Jake. Smart move.
Yeah. And then you can see I've started to do some work on the Titan in the bottom right. I think he's got a few wounds on him. I'm depleting the slaves. So I'm actually starting to pick up a decent amount of points out of this match, from an early down point. Now, admittedly, he's gotten both of the Phoenixes, so there is that.
True.
So I go in, I kill the champion, not a huge surprise, I stick.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure if there's another picture after this, is there?
There is not.
So let me quickly describe what happens here. Basically, I end up, he then gives me the little adept wizard who, despite popping the Nova Flare, I do not manage to kill.
Oh wow, really? And he was in his pants.
Yeah, he has a 4-up Aegis, but the Nova Flare itself is 2s by 3s divine. So I should have killed him just with the Prince, realistically. Then I have the Griffin and the Stomp. I mean, I think on average I do like 5 to 6 wounds against that guy, but I did 2, which was a real bummer. I break that turn. He does not catch me. And then it was bottom of 6. I rally on a minimized 10, not surprising. And that's the way that the game ends, essentially. Okay. Unfortunately, there was a couple of little things that ended up being a bit of a shame. I got that Titan down to 2 wounds left, which with 7 to begin with means I did not get half points for it. And he managed to open it off the board after killing my bolt thrower, I think. So a little bit of a mistake there. I think I could have gotten that model if I'd pushed the bolt thrower out into the center of the table. Yeah. I would have been able to finish it off in the final turn. So that was a little bit of a shame, but ultimately, I think given how the game started, this could have gone a lot worse. Yeah. And I picked up a decent amount of points, and aside from the Phoenixes, didn't lose a lot after that, after the Master went down. So yeah, on to the end, I guess.
And that leaves you with a 5.
I think I have to be honest. I don't think we calculated these scores.
This is just your
log them. So I believe this is where we ended up. It could have been like a 4 to 6. I can't remember exactly, but either way, I think match, aside from the thing with him deleting my bunker and wizard early, match played out sort of like I expected. I think I could have, gotten a few more points than this. I think it would have been pretty reasonable to hold on to 8 points in the match where he starts on spoils. But it was good to test the matchup. And definitely felt like my rating was accurate at the end of the day. So
yeah, definitely.
And a good game. Jake played really well. Beautiful army, lots of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I think losing this unit early, the bunker unit and the wizard, that really hurts. That just really hurts.
Yeah, I mean that was just dumb play.
But exactly, that's what you hit the nail on the head. It was just dumb play. But I think you both played it right, and it kind of it shook out how it was supposed to. Yeah. All right, cool. So that's Scrimmage 1 down. And next report will be Scrimmage 2, which is a little preview. Which team did you have the Scrimmage 2 against?
Germany.
Germany.
Which they were actually a favorite to take the whole thing going into the tournament. They had returned with a roughly similar team, but had added Furion to the team because he'd been working in Germany for the year. So obviously with him and Thomas on there, you've got 2 of the certainly the best players in the world out there. So this was an intimidating one, but I will say Furion was not able to play because he was playing in the ESC, and I think ultimately won it. So rightfully so, but he did end up winning the ESC while we were having our scrimmage against Germany. So
cool.
Yeah, but some good games coming up for sure.
All right, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everybody.